On March 7th, 2025, Brad Sigmund faced a firing squad in South Carolina, the first in America in 15 years. By the end of the month, 4 more men, Aaron Gunches, Wendell Grissom, Edward James, and Mikal Mahdi, met their fates in prisons across 4 states. Who were these men, and who did they harm? What do their stories reveal about crime and punishment today? Welcome to Mr. Cold Case, a place where true crime isn't just a story, it's a window into human lives, choices, and consequences. Whether you're a longtime viewer or new to the journey, I'm glad you're here to explore one of the heaviest chapters in recent memory. What does punishment achieve? When a life is taken by crime or by court, does it heal or does it echo? I'd love to hear from you. Hit subscribe to join us for more stories that challenge and inform, and tap the bell so you don't miss what's next. In 2025, the death penalty in America was a shadow of its former self, yet it burned brightly in certain corners. Of the 50 states, 27 still allowed capital punishment, but only a handful, South Carolina, Arizona, Oklahoma, Florida, Alabama, and Texas, put it into practice. Others, like California and Oregon, had frozen their death rows, with governors or courts halting executions for years. How the penalty was carried out sparked its own clashes. Lethal injection, the standard since the 1980s, stumbled after drug shortages and botched executions. Some inmates lingered in pain for hours. States scrambled for options. South Carolina brought back the firing squad in 2021, a choice praised by some for its stark honesty, condemned by others as a step backward. Alabama's nitrogen gas, first used in 2024, faced lawsuits over claims it wasn't as humane as promised. Electrocution, still legal in a few places, was rarely tapped, too tied to an older era. These weren't just logistics. They shaped how people viewed the act, as justice or something harsher. Brad Sigmund, South Carolina, March 7th, 2025. Our first story takes us to Greenville County, South Carolina. Here in 2001, 2 lives were stolen, setting a chain of events that would end 24 years later. Gladys and David Lark weren't just names in a case file. They were the heart of their family. Gladys, 59, was a quilter whose hands crafted heirlooms for her grandchildren. David, 62, fixed neighbors' cars for free, his laugh a fixture at local cookouts. Married 35 years, they planned a quiet retirement. That dream died on May 23, 2001, when Brad Sigmund walked into their home. Sigmund, then 43, was unraveling. He'd been dating the Lark's daughter, Rebecca, for months, but their breakup sent him spiraling. Convinced he could win her back, he armed himself with a baseball bat and a .357 Magnum revolver, bought days earlier. Around dusk, he broke into the Lark's trailer, demanding to know Rebecca's whereabouts. When David confronted him, Sigmund swung again and again. Gladys rushed to help her husband, but the blows kept coming. Both were left lifeless, their home a scene of chaos. Sigmund waited for Rebecca, who wasn't there, then kidnapped her from another house at gunpoint. Her quick thinking, convincing him to stop for food, led to his arrest days later at a gas station. The trial came fast in 2002. Prosecutors called it a calculated act. The bat left David with a fractured skull. Gladys had fought to her last breath. Jurors heard how Sigmund confessed, claiming jealousy, not remorse. After 6 hours of deliberation, the jury chose death, unmoved by pleas for mercy. Appeals stretched over 2 decades, focusing on mental health and prison reform. Sigmund mentored inmates, studied scripture, but courts held firm. March 7, 2025, Broad River Correctional Institution. Sigmund, now 67, made a choice that turned heads. Firing squad, the first in America since 2010. At 6:08 p.m., 3 volunteer guards fired from 15 feet, ending his life in seconds. His last meal was simple: fried chicken, green beans, biscuits, shared with inmates down the hall. His final statement, read by his lawyer, struck a chord. He asked Christians to fight for the 28 men still on South Carolina's death row, saying redemption was possible, even for him. This case leaves us with questions. Sigmund's end was swift, but what did it resolve? Did Aaron Gunches, Arizona, March 19th, 2025. In the vast Sonoran Desert of Arizona, A life was taken in 2002 that would ripple forward for decades. Ted Price was more than a name in court records. He was a 39-year-old father who lived for his two daughters. A mechanic by trade, Ted spent weekends teaching them to ride bikes, his hands stained with grease but gentle with care. Known in Mesa for his quick wit and love of hiking, on November 1st, 2002, that future was stolen by Aaron Gunches, a man driven by a tangled web of jealousy and control. Gunches, then 30, was dating Kate, Ted's ex-partner. Their relationship was stormy, marked by arguments and mistrust. Ted, still co-parenting with Kate, stayed cordial, but Gunches saw him as a rival. That fall, fueled by resentment, Gunches planned a confrontation. He lured Ted to a remote desert spot near Apache Junction, claiming they needed to talk about Kate. Armed with a 9mm pistol, Gunches didn't come to negotiate. As dusk fell, he fired multiple shots, striking Ted in the chest and head. Ted's body lay undiscovered for days until hikers stumbled across it. Gunches fled, but Kate's tip to police, alarmed by his erratic behavior, led to his arrest within a week. The 2004 trial laid bare a stark case. Prosecutors argued premeditation. Gunches had bought the gun legally, scouted the location, and lied to Kate about his plans. Ballistics matched the weapon, and his fingerprints were on shells at the scene. Witnesses described his obsession with controlling Kate, painting Ted's death as a possessive act, not a spur-of-the-moment clash. Gunches' defense claimed self-defense, alleging Ted had threatened him first, but no evidence backed it. No wounds on Gunches, no second weapon. After a 3-week trial, the jury convicted him of first-degree murder and kidnapping, sentencing him to death in June 2004. March 19, 2025, Florence State Prison, 10:02 a.m. Gunches, now 53, faced lethal injection, Arizona's first execution of the year. Gunches' execution went smoothly by reports. A single drug protocol, pentobarbital, ended his life in minutes. His last meal, a cheeseburger, fries, and a milkshake, reflected a craving for comfort, not defiance. Mesa's hiking community honors Ted with an annual walk, raising funds for his girls' education, a legacy of love amid loss. Next, we'll head to Oklahoma, where another life ended too soon. Wendell Grissom, Oklahoma, March 20th, 2025. In the summer of 1989, Blaine County, Oklahoma, Debbie Lee, 24, a cashier at a local diner, she saved every tip for nursing school, dreaming of helping kids in rural clinics. On June 12th, that warmth was extinguished when Wendell Grissom, barely 20, crossed her path, driven by greed and desperation in a robbery gone wrong. Grissom wasn't a hardened criminal, but he was broke, drifting through odd jobs with an accomplice, Bobby Wayne Collins. That night, high on methamphetamine and needing cash, they targeted Debbie's apartment, expecting an easy grab. TV, jewelry, maybe rent money. Armed with a hunting knife, Grissom broke in after midnight, thinking she was out. Debbie was home folding laundry. Startled, she screamed, and Grissom panicked. He stabbed her repeatedly, 7 times per autopsy reports, in the chest and neck. Collins, keeping watch, fled with him, grabbing a radio and $50. Debbie bled out alone, found the next morning by a friend. Police traced the pair through fingerprints in Collins' confession, arresting Grissom within days. The 1990 trial gripped Watanga, a town unaccustomed to such violence. Prosecutors built a tight case. Grissom's knife matched the wounds, blood on his shoes linked him to the scene, and he'd sold Debbie's radio hours later. They called it felony murder, killing during a robbery, no mercy shown. Debbie's mother testified, clutching her daughter's nurse's pin, a gut punch for jurors. Grissom's defense admitted guilt, but pleaded for life, citing his youth, drug haze, and abusive upbringing. A psychologist noted impulse issues, possibly from head injuries, but jurors saw intent. Grissom hadn't stopped stabbing. After 4 hours, they sentenced him to death, a decision upheld despite 35 years of appeals. Courts rejected final pleas, citing no legal errors. Grissom, now 56, had run out of time. March 20th, 2025, Oklahoma State Penitentiary in McAlester, 10:06 a.m. Grissom faced lethal injection, part of Oklahoma's steady execution pace. 4 in 2024, 3 planned for 2025. The state used a 3-drug protocol: midazolam, vecuronium bromide, potassium chloride, despite debates over midazolam's sedation failures elsewhere. Grissom's death was quick, no complications reported. His last meal was steak, baked potato, and pecan pie, a nod to his mother's cooking. No final words reached the public. A guard later said he'd stared at the ceiling, lips moving silently. Debbie's loss reshaped her world. Her parents sold their farm, unable to stay where memories lingered. Friends started a scholarship in her name, funding nursing students, 5 by 2025, carrying her dream forward. As we turn to Florida next, another life cut short waits to be heard. Edward Thomas James, Florida, March 20th, 2025. Pensacola, Florida, 1995, was a coastal town of sandy beaches and close families, where kids rode bikes until streetlights flickered on. Tiffany McCauley, just 8 years old, was the light of her block. With a gap-toothed grin, she'd spend afternoons drawing chalk animals on sidewalks or reading library books about dolphins, dreaming of becoming a marine biologist. Her parents, Linda and Mark, called her their spark, always humming, always curious. On August 14th, 1995, that spark was snuffed out when Edward Thomas James, a 33-year-old drifter, broke into their home, leaving a wound Pensacola still carries. James wasn't a local. Raised in Alabama, he'd been in and out of trouble, petty theft, bar fights, before landing in Florida, jobless and restless. That night, strung out on cocaine and needing cash, he targeted the McCauley's modest ranch house, expecting it empty. Tiffany was home alone, her parents at a church meeting. James pried open a window, aiming for electronics or jewelry. When Tiffany woke, startled by noise, in a panic, James struck her with a lamp, then strangled her with a phone cord, ensuring silence. He fled with $20 and a necklace, leaving her body in her bedroom, found hours later by Linda's anguished scream. Police caught James days later, his prints on the window, the necklace pawned nearby. The 1996 trial shook Escambia County. Prosecutors leaned hard. James's DNA was under Tiffany's nails, proving a struggle. His shoe treads matched marks in her room. They called it a predator's act, choosing a vulnerable target, showing no remorse. Linda's testimony, holding Tiffany's dolphin bookmark, left jurors in tears. James's public defender admitted the break-in, but argued the killing wasn't planned. Cocaine fueled a split-second choice, not malice. They highlighted his low IQ, around 80, and a childhood of neglect. But jurors saw intent. Strangling took time. After 5 hours, they voted death, a sentence Florida's courts rarely overturn. Appeals dragged 29 years, citing mental capacity and drug addiction, but judges found no grounds for reversal. March 20th, 2025, Florida State Prison in Stark, 6:03 p.m. James, now 63, faced lethal injection, Florida's third execution of 2025, a state known for its steady pace. The process was clinical, a 3-drug cocktail: etomidate, rocuronium bromide, potassium acetate, delivered in a sterile chamber. Florida had refined its protocol since 2017's drug swap debates, and James's death took 7 minutes. No hitches reported. His last meal was pizza and orange soda, a childlike choice that stirred whispers. No final statement came. His lawyer said he'd been incoherent, mumbling about regret but naming no one. Tiffany's loss reshaped Pensacola. Linda and Mark became advocates, founding a child safety program that trained 2,000 kids by 2025, turning grief into action. A dolphin statue at a local park, funded by donations, marks her love of the sea. Visited yearly on her birthday. We head next to South Carolina again, where another community mourned a protector lost. Mikal Dean Mahdi, South Carolina, March 29th, 2025. Greenville, South Carolina in 2004, James Myers, 41, was a cornerstone of that community, an off-duty police officer who coached youth soccer and patrolled with a calm hand. Known as Jimmy to friends, he'd barbecue ribs for his precinct. A father of 2 teens, he taught them to fish on Lake Hartwell, promising a boat when he retired. On July 9, 2004, Michael Dean Mahdi, 24, ended those plans in a fleeting, violent moment, targeting Myers for the badge he wore. Mahdi was no stranger to trouble. Raised in foster homes, he'd racked up charges, shoplifting, assault by his 20s. That summer, broke and angry, he fixated on police, blaming them for his latest arrest. Armed with a stolen .38 revolver, Mahdi spotted Myers at a gas station, off-duty but recognizable in his precinct cap. What started as a robbery, Mahdi demanded Myers' wallet, turned deadly when Myers resisted, reaching for his own gun. Mahdi fired twice, hitting Myers in the chest and neck. He fled with $12, leaving Myers bleeding beside his truck. A clerk's 911 call brought police fast. Mahdi was caught hours later, the revolver ditched but traced through ballistics. The 2005 trial riveted South Carolina. Prosecutors called it an ambush. Mahdi knew Myers was an officer, targeting him to settle a grudge. Blood spatter showed Myers hadn't drawn his weapon, contradicting Mahdi's claim of self-defense. A witness heard Mahdi mutter, "Cop deserved it," during his arrest, sealing his intent. Myers' widow, Sarah, testified, holding his badge, her voice breaking as she recalled their last dinner. Mahdi's defense leaned on his fractured past, foster care trauma, possible PTSD from childhood abuse. But jurors focused on the crime. Killing an officer carried weight. After 3 hours, they sentenced him to death. Appeals spanned 20 years, arguing bias against Mahdi's race, black and mental health, but courts upheld the verdict, citing clear evidence. March 29, 2025, Broad River Correctional Institution, 6:05 p.m. Mahdi, now 45, chose firing squad, South Carolina's second that month, a rare repeat. 3 volunteers fired at 15 feet, ending his life instantly. His last meal, shrimp and grits, sweet tea, echoed low country roots he'd rarely known. No final statement was shared. A chaplain said Mahdi prayed quietly, naming no one. Myers' death left scars. Sarah raised their teens alone, one now a deputy honoring his dad. Greenville's police named a training center for Myers, teaching de-escalation he'd mastered. Soccer teams wear JM patches yearly, kids he coached now coaching others. Mahdi's act struck at trust, targeting a man for his role, not his wallet. 20 years later, his choice of firing squad added a final note to a divisive case. Does the method of justice alter its meaning, or is it merely a footnote? 5 stories, 5 endings, 1 month. March 2025 wove a complex thread through America's heart. These cases, spanning 4 states, weren't just legal outcomes. They were human, carrying echoes of pain and choices that linger. From a small-town diner to a desert trail, a child's bedroom to a gas station, each began with an act that shattered lives: parents, a father, a dreamer, a protector, a child. When does delay serve truth, and when does it erode it? Methods marked another thread. 2 chose rifles, a nod to an older era, revived for its stark finality. 3 faced needles, a modern standard clouded by past failures. Each choice, bullets or drugs, sparked its own debate, not just among lawyers but everyday people. Some saw firing squads as raw, others as honest. Injections, meant to be clinical, stirred fears of hidden agony. Does how a life ends shape the justice it seeks to deliver? Does ending a life balance another's loss, or deepen the void? That question stays, carried by every name remembered here. At Mr. Cold Case, we chase these truths not for answers, but for understanding. If this journey stirred you, join us. Subscribe to dive deeper into stories that challenge and haunt. Share this with someone who ponders life's toughest choices. It's a path we walk together.